Hi, welcome to Come Study with me, Elder Brock. Today, we will be looking at 2 Samuel chapters 22 through 24. By the time we reach these final chapters, David's life is no longer only a story of battles, caves, crowns, victories, and failures. It becomes a testimony. 2 Samuel 22 lets us hear David looking back over the long road and singing about the Lord who delivered him. This is not the song of a perfect man pretending his life had no sorrow. It is the song of a man who knew danger, sin, mercy, discipline, and rescue. David had been hunted by Saul. He had stood before giants. He had watched his own house become divided. He had also felt the weight of his own choices. Yet when he looks back, the center of the story is not David's strength. The center is the Lord. He calls the Lord his rock, his fortress, his deliverer, his shield, and the horn of his salvation. Those words matter. A rock does not move when everything around it shakes. A fortress protects when the enemy is too strong. A deliverer comes when the person in danger cannot rescue himself. David remembers crying unto the Lord in distress. He remembers being surrounded by trouble. He describes the Lord as mighty, active, and near. The Lord is not shown as distant from the suffering of his servant. He hears, he moves, he rescues. In the language of the song, heaven itself seems to respond when the covenant servant cries for help. That is why this chapter still teaches us about Jesus Christ. David's song is ancient, but the truth is living. The Lord does not only give small encouragement from far away. He comes down into human trouble. He hears the cry of the covenant servant. He gives light in darkness. He strengthens hands that are weak. He makes a way where the path seems closed. David also remembers that the Lord's way is perfect. That is a powerful line at the end of a complicated life. David's way had not always been perfect. His choices had brought pain. But the Lord's way remained clean, steady, and faithful. That is hope. Our story does not become holy because we never needed mercy. It becomes holy when we turn back to the Lord and let His mercy become the strongest part of the story. There is also a quiet warning here. David's praise is not pride wearing religious words. It is gratitude. He knows the Lord lifted him. He knows deliverance was a gift. When a person forgets that, victory can become dangerous. But when a person remembers the Lord, even old battles can become sacred witnesses. So chapter 22 closes with praise. David is not worshiping his own courage. He is blessing the God who saved him again and again. The spiritual landing is simple. When the Lord is our rock, our life may still pass through storms, but the foundation does not have to collapse. Through Jesus Christ, deliverance is not only a memory from the past. It is the promise of a living Redeemer who still saves. 2 Samuel 23 gives us David's last words and then remembers the mighty men who stood with him. The chapter begins with the voice of a king near the end of his life. David speaks of the Spirit of the Lord speaking by him. He describes what righteous rule should look like. One who rules in the fear of God is like the light of morning when the sun rises after rain. That image is beautiful. A righteous leader is not meant to be a storm over the people. He is meant to be light after the storm. He brings order, safety, truth, and life. David had seen enough of darkness to know why holy leadership matters. Israel had seen Saul's fear, David's victories, civil conflict, betrayal, and sorrow. The nation needed more than power. It needed righteousness. Yet these last words also point beyond David. David was the anointed king, but he was not the final king. His house carried a covenant promise. The hope of Israel would not be fulfilled by David alone, but by the Son of David, Jesus Christ. He is the true king who rules in perfect righteousness. In him, the morning light never fails. David also speaks of an everlasting covenant. That matters because David's own life had many broken places. He could not claim that everything in his house was as it should have been, but the Lord's covenant promise was still sure. God's faithfulness was stronger than human weakness. That does not erase responsibility, but it does show the mercy and steadiness of the Lord. Then the chapter turns to David's mighty men. These are not random names in a forgotten military record. They remind us that David's kingdom was carried by loyalty, courage, sacrifice, and covenant brotherhood. Some fought when the odds looked impossible. Some stood in a field when others fled. Some broke through enemy lines just to bring David water from Bethlehem. But when David received that water, he would not drink it. He poured it out unto the Lord. That moment teaches something deep. David saw that the devotion of those men was too sacred to treat casually. Their lives had been risked. Their loyalty belonged before God. What could have become a trophy became an offering. This chapter is about more than heroes. It is about consecrated strength. The best courage does not exist so people can praise the warrior. It exists so the work of the Lord can move forward. Every faithful servant has a place in the story, even when the name is easy to pass over. Here is the listener moment for us. What strength has the Lord given you, and where can you consecrate it back to Him? 2 Samuel 23 ends with names, but behind the names is a doctrine. God builds His work through covenant people. Some are kings, some are soldiers, some are quiet servants, some are remembered by many, and some are known mostly to God. But every loyal offering matters when it is placed before the Lord. 2 Samuel 24 closes the book with a painful but powerful lesson. David numbers Israel, and the act becomes a spiritual warning. Counting people was not the problem by itself. The danger was what the counting represented. David's heart was turning toward the size of his kingdom, the strength of his armies, and the visible measure of power. That temptation is easy to understand. After years of conflict, a king may want to know how strong he looks. He may want a number that proves security. But in the covenant story of Israel, safety was never meant to rest first on military size. Israel's strength was the Lord. When numbers become the foundation of trust, the heart has already begun to move away from God. Joab could see that something was wrong, yet the command went forward. When the numbering was finished, David's heart smote him. That phrase matters. Before the judgment came, conscience spoke. David knew he had sinned. He did not excuse it. He prayed for the Lord to take away his iniquity. The prophet Gad came with 3 choices of consequence. David's answer reveals both fear and faith. He said he would rather fall into the hand of the Lord, because the Lord's mercies are great. That does not make the consequence easy. The pestilence came, and many died. Sin never stays as small as it looked at the beginning. Pride may begin privately, but it can wound publicly. Then the scene moves toward Jerusalem, where the destroying angel is stayed. The Lord commands David to build an altar on the threshing floor of Araunah the Jebusite. This is a turning point. Judgment stops at the place of sacrifice. David goes there, and Araunah offers to give him everything freely. But David refuses to offer the Lord something that costs him nothing. That line is one of the great spiritual lessons of the chapter. True worship is not leftovers. Repentance is not pretending there was no cost. Covenant love gives the Lord the heart, not only the easy part of life. David understands that an offering without sacrifice would not match the seriousness of the moment. David buys the place, builds the altar, and offers sacrifice. The plague is stayed. The book ends not with David's greatness, but with mercy at an altar. That is exactly where the story needs to end. 2 Samuel has shown glory and grief, victory and sin, covenant promise and family sorrow. Its final picture is a repentant king, an altar, and the Lord turning away destruction. For disciples of Jesus Christ, this points our eyes to the greater sacrifice. David offered burnt offerings, but Christ offered himself. David built an altar where judgment stopped for Israel. Jesus Christ went to the cross and rose again so mercy could overcome sin and death for all who come unto him. So the final lesson of 2 Samuel is not simply, do not count your strength. It is, do not trust your strength more than God. When pride leads us away, repentance brings us back. And because of Jesus Christ, the place of judgment can become the place of mercy.